They were the internet's wild hearts, a passionate, messy, and magnetic couple that social media couldn't stop watching. But one night of jealousy turned their chaotic love story into a blood-soaked nightmare. Shamira stood over Kavian in their dimly lit apartment, her hands trembling as he laughed off the flirtatious texts she found on his phone. "It was nothing," he said, brushing past her like it didn't matter. But to Shamira, it did. Everything snapped in that moment. She grabbed the heavy glass ashtray from the table and brought it down on his skull with a sickening crack. Blood pooled fast. Kavian groaned once, then went still, his final breath stolen by the woman who once swore she couldn't live without him. How does passion become poison? How does the person you trust most become your executioner? What happens when obsession disguises itself as love? Before we get into this jaw-dropping case, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more disturbing stories about love, obsession, and betrayal gone horribly wrong. Shamira Ellison was no stranger to chaos, and that was exactly why people loved her. At just 27, the Yazoo City native had turned her skill with lace fronts and hot combs into a digital empire. She wasn't just a hairstylist, she was a spectacle. Online, she was Queen Sham, bold, brash, magnetic. One minute she was posting flawless wig tutorials, the next she was dragging a cheating ex on live or crying through a story time that ended in a prayer. Her followers didn't come for perfection. They came for the mess, the heart, the fight. But what they didn't know was how deep her pain ran. A childhood defined by instability. A mother who dipped in and out. A father she barely remembered. And relationship after relationship that ended with her curled up in the dark, asking why she was never enough. Shamira built a persona so loud the silence couldn't creep in. Then came Kavian Darnell. KJ to everyone who knew him. 31 years old, soft-spoken, built like a linebacker but gentle in a way that caught people off guard. He owned a modest auto shop on the edge of town and fixed cars with the kind of patience that made even the most irate customers trust him. That's how they met. Her tire was flat, his smile wasn't. She flirted, he chuckled, and the rest happened fast. Within weeks, they were dancing in the kitchen on TikTok and eating crab legs in mukbangs that racked up views by the thousands. They got matching tattoos, his read her king, hers said KJ forever. And for a while, it seemed like Queen Sham had finally met her match. They were everything the internet loves to devour. Loud, affectionate, always on the verge of either breaking up or getting married. Their fans cheered when they argued, then cried when they made up. But behind the filters and followers, behind the dinners and dance videos, the cracks were widening. Fights turned colder. DMs went unchecked. Jealousy slithered between them like smoke. Still, Shamira held tight. Called him her peace, her soulmate, her everything. But peace was never what they were built for. They were fire and flame, beautiful to look at, impossible to hold. And eventually, one of them would burn. Kavian was still there, physically. The same hands that rubbed Shamira's back on live, the same smile that made thousands swoon. But something had shifted, and she could feel it like a cold draft in a room full of heat. He started working late more often. Said business was picking up. Said he needed to focus. But the way he guarded his phone, the way he barely touched her unless the camera was on, it didn't sit right. Shamira knew that feeling too well. She'd lived it before. Men who smiled sweet, kissed soft, and lied with the same breath. Her mind, always one step ahead of heartbreak, began filling in the blanks. She started checking his tagged photos. Scrolling through his followers. Watching for patterns. That's when she noticed her, a client named Tisha Washington. Pretty. Flirty. Too many emojis in the comments. Too many likes on too many old posts. Shamira clicked her profile, found the salon appointment tag, and felt the breath catch in her throat. Tisha had been to the shop twice this month. Once on a day Kavian said he worked alone. She didn't need proof. Not really. The messages she found later, nothing explicit, just "you funny LOL and next time I'll bring snacks," were enough. Enough to confirm what her gut had already screamed. Kavian was slipping away. Maybe not physically. Maybe he hadn't touched Tisha at all. But emotionally, he was already gone. When she brought it up, her voice shaky but sharp, Kavian laughed. Said she was tripping. That she always did this. That she created drama for no reason. It was a familiar dismissal, one that made her skin crawl. The conversation ended with silence, the kind of silence that echoes louder than shouting. Her friends told her to cut her losses. Told her men like Kavian don't stop once they start lying. Her therapist mentioned boundaries, detachment, maybe a break. But Shamira didn't believe in breaks. She believed in holding on. Fixing things. Fighting for what was hers. What no one knew was that the fight had already begun. Not with fists. Not yet. But in her head. In the quiet hours after a crying spell. In the way she started watching him sleep like he was a stranger. Her mind was splitting at the seams, trying to decide if she was crazy, or if he was cruel. If she was being dramatic, or if she was being played. And if he really was cheating, if he really thought he could humiliate her after everything she gave, after she made him a name, a brand, a man worth watching, then he was wrong. Shamira wasn't going to be anyone's before. If she couldn't have him, then no one would. August 19, 2024, started like any other storm waiting to break. The sun was high over Yazoo City, the air thick with that late summer heaviness that sticks to your skin and makes everything feel slower, heavier, except Shamira's heartbeat. Her mind had been racing since sunrise, flipping between memories, screenshots, and the image of Tisha's name in Kavian's phone. She had already made her decision. Not consciously, maybe not even fully rationally, but something inside her had crossed a line. There would be no turning back. She got up early, showered in silence, and walked 2 blocks to the corner store. Her usual spot for lashes, hair glue, and snacks. But today, she asked the man behind the counter, someone she'd known since she was 15, if they sold razors. He pointed her to the back. She picked the straight razor without hesitation, tucked it beside her Red Bull and gum, and smiled like she wasn't planning a murder. By late afternoon, she was back home cooking his favorite meal. Bacon-wrapped chicken, baked macaroni with the extra cheese he always asked for. She set the table, lit candles, poured him a drink, and even took a TikTok video. In the clip, she smiled into the camera with those lashes fluttering like butterfly wings, captioning it, "Sometimes, love means forgiving what your pride won't let you." Her followers flooded the comments with hearts and fire emojis, never knowing they were watching the calm before the carnage. Kavian came home around 7. He looked tired but happy, he always softened when food was involved. They laughed over dinner. He complimented her hair, touched her knee, even helped clean up. Later, they had sex. Slow and familiar. Like nothing was broken. Like the cracks in their foundation hadn't already split wide open. But Shamira had already seen it all. Every message. Every lie. Every promise he made to Tisha that mirrored the ones he made to her. She had gone through his phone that afternoon while he showered. The passcode hadn't changed. Around 10:30 p.m., Kavian was dozing off on the couch, a movie playing low in the background. Shamira went into the bathroom and slipped into a long silk robe, deep red, like dried blood, and a pair of black heels. She looked at herself in the mirror for a long time, tilting her head, smoothing her edges. The razor sat heavy in the pocket of her robe, a quiet weapon waiting to scream. She walked back into the living room like a seductress, the click of her heels barely louder than her breath. Kavian smiled when he saw her. "Damn, you look good," he mumbled, half asleep. She straddled him slowly, her face inches from his, her hand resting on his chest. "You still love me?" she asked, her voice low and sweet. He nodded without thinking. Of course. That's when she pulled the razor. One clean motion. Across his throat. The sound of skin splitting was wet, sickening, almost soft. Kavion's eyes went wide. He gasped, blood spraying from his neck as he clawed at the air, trying to speak, trying to scream, trying to understand. But Shamira wasn't done. He stumbled off the couch, hitting the floor hard, dragging himself toward the front door, leaving a streak of red across the hardwood. But she followed. Calm. Determined. Silent. She climbed on top of him, knees pressing into his sides, and raised the razor again. Then again. And again. 48 times. His chest. His face. His arms as he tried to shield himself. Each slash a scream. Each stab a sentence. I loved you. Stab. I built you. Stab. You gonna embarrass me? Stab. Over her. Neighbors would later say they heard the screaming, a woman yelling, almost howling, I gave you everything. Everything. And you text some bitch. By the time the police arrived, the apartment was silent again. The front door was open. Blood pooled like paint on the floor. Kavion's body was unrecognizable, face swollen, flesh torn, mouth open mid-scream that never finished. Shamira sat on the couch, legs crossed, soaked in crimson from chest to toes. She lit a cigarette, took one slow drag, and exhaled like it was just another night. When officers entered with guns drawn, she didn't flinch. Just looked at them, eyes blank, and said softly, I had to. He was mine. The morning after Kavion Darnell's murder, Yazoo City woke to sirens and headlines, but the internet woke to chaos. By 8 a.m., local news had already reported the story in stark, clinical detail. Influencer allegedly murders boyfriend in domestic dispute. By 9, it was national. By noon, it was viral. Screenshots of Shamira's last TikTok, the one where she cooked dinner, smiled into the camera, and captioned it with that chilling line about love and forgiveness, circulated like wildfire. The comments multiplied by the thousands, some confused, some furious, others already calling it iconic. For better or worse, the digital world had found its next obsession. Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, no platform was safe from the storm. Her fans were stunned, posting teary reaction videos and piecing together old live streams, trying to understand how the same woman who once cried over missing her father's funeral could now be the center of a murder investigation. Her critics, meanwhile, claimed they'd seen it coming for years. They dug up her most volatile clips, screaming at Kavion on IG Live, crying while throwing her phone, once even pacing back and forth saying, if he cheats, I swear I'll kill him. And now he was dead. The hashtags were instant. Hashtag QueenShamKiller trended by lunchtime. Hashtag Justice for KJ followed, creating a digital tug-of-war that only escalated as more details surfaced. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone became an investigator. Everyone remembered a moment when Shamira went too far. Then came the voice memos. Released in the early stages of the investigation, they were taken straight from her phone, short, furious bursts of emotion that sounded like diary entries left behind on purpose. In one, she ranted, I swear, if I catch him lying, I'll end it. I ain't never letting a man play me again. In another, I ain't dumb. I see the signs. He think I'm weak. I'll show him crazy. They were chilling. Raw. And, to the prosecution, premeditated. The DMs didn't help her case. Messages to her closest friends revealed just how deep her obsession had gone. He got me messed up, one read. I'll kill that nigga if he ever cheat on me. Screenshots of those conversations made their way to the blogs within hours, shared out of context, reposted for likes, framed as either cries for help or threats of violence, depending on which side of the digital aisle you stood on. The public became judge and jury long before she saw a courtroom. Podcasts and YouTube commentators jumped in next, dissecting every post, every frame, every word. Some painted Kavian as emotionally manipulative, suggesting he gaslit Shamira and weaponized her trauma against her. Others saw him as a victim of textbook abuse, caught in a relationship where every apology was a trap and every quiet night was borrowed time. The debate turned vicious. Videos of Kavian fixing cars and laughing with customers were edited beside footage of Shamira yelling on live. Think pieces emerged. Was this the symptom of untreated mental illness or the consequence of unchecked fame? Was Shamira a woman pushed past her breaking point, or a narcissist whose ego couldn't survive rejection? Even Shamira's therapist, in a leaked court report, noted her intense fear of abandonment, her history of unresolved trauma, and a tendency toward emotional dysregulation. But nothing explained the savagery. Nothing softened the 48 stab wounds. Nothing brought Kavian back. His family held a candlelight vigil the same week, live-streamed on Facebook. His sister sobbed into the microphone. He loved her. We all saw it. And she made him think she was safe. The video was shared 300,000 times. Meanwhile, Shamira sat in a jail cell, her mugshot blank-faced and bare. No lashes. No filters. No captions. Just a woman the internet couldn't decide whether to worship or crucify. The fire that had built her name now consumed her entirely. And the world watched it all burn. The trial of Shamira Ellison wasn't just a court proceeding, it was a nationwide obsession. By the time jury selection began in late October 2024, True Crime podcasts were already dedicating weekly episodes to dissecting every development. While Shamira had claimed betrayal and heartbreak, detectives combing through Kavian's devices and social accounts found no hard evidence of infidelity, only a series of flirtatious messages between him and a client named Tisha Washington. No nudes. No late-night meetups. No hotel receipts. Just banter that, while emotionally inappropriate, fell short of cheating by any legal or even moral standard. Still, when police interviewed Shamira following her arrest, her resolve was chilling. He lied. That was enough, she said, emotionless. I told him what it was. He tested me. That statement, captured on bodycam footage, was later played in court as part of the prosecution's case, a cold, unrepentant admission that stunned the nation. As the trial opened, spectators packed into the Mississippi courtroom, with dozens more crowding outside, watching through local news coverage or live streams. Journalists from Atlanta, Houston, even Los Angeles had flown in. Her trial was no longer about the crime itself, it was about what she represented, an influencer culture that blurred the line between real life and performance. The prosecution wasted no time painting Shamira as a woman driven not by trauma, but by ego, a woman who had built her entire identity around control, image, and devotion, only to unravel the moment that identity was threatened. They played the voice memos again, those raw, unfiltered recordings she made days before the murder, projected onto giant screens in the courtroom. I'll kill that nigga if he ever cheat on me, one voice memo played, Shamira's voice trembling with rage. The courtroom was silent. Then came the evidence, the receipt for the straight razor purchased the morning of the murder, found in her car's center console. The robe she wore that night, folded neatly in the laundry basket with his dried blood on the cuffs. Surveillance footage of her buying Kavian's favorite wine at the store. The homemade dinner. The carefully crafted TikTok. It all wove a narrative of premeditation, of calculated deception wrapped in domestic bliss. She didn't snap, the lead prosecutor told the jury. She staged. The defense, however, had a different story to tell. They brought in psychiatrists who testified that Shamira had been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder and was in the throes of a trauma-induced psychotic break at the time of the murder. Her attorney detailed a life shaped by violence and neglect, molested at 6 by a family friend, shuffled between relatives after her father left, beaten by 2 previous boyfriends, and abandoned emotionally at every turn. Her mother wept on the stand, describing her daughter's breakdowns. Her aunt testified about nights spent holding a shaking teenage Shamira after violent episodes. Her old therapist shared notes about her client's irrational fear of abandonment, suicidal ideation, and obsession with being enough in relationships. On December 3, 2024, Shamira Ellison stood motionless in her navy blue prison-issued uniform as the verdict was read, guilty of first-degree murder. Gasps filled the courtroom. Outside, reporters rushed to deliver the news to the nation. Before sentencing, Shamira was offered the chance to speak. She declined. No apology. No tears. No excuses. Just silence. But the judge had something to say. This was not a crime of passion, he said, voice low, deliberate. It was performance art, written in blood, staged in comfort, broadcast to the world. You did not lose control. You choreographed every second. And for that, you will live every second of the rest of your life behind bars. He sentenced her to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As she was led away, her expression didn't flinch. She had gone viral once for making people feel seen. Now, she was infamous for making a nation look away. Outside, crowds began to disperse. Kavion's family stood in tears. His mother clutched a photo of her son in a frame that read, "My gentle soul." She gave a quiet statement, "We'll never get him back. But at least the world now knows who she really was." And in that Mississippi courtroom, the curtain fell on a drama that had mesmerized millions, leaving behind nothing but grief, questions, and a legacy built on pain. This wasn't just a murder, it was a descent, slow and spiraling, into the darkest corners of the human heart. It was the kind of story that unfolds in fragments, a TikTok caption, a voice memo, a dinner made with love and vengeance. Shamira Ellison and Kavion Johnson weren't just two people in a broken relationship, they were symbols of a larger storm. A generation raised on instant validation, public displays of affection, and private emotional wreckage. She was a woman wounded by years of betrayal and silence. He was a man caught in a relationship that looked perfect on the outside but was quietly devouring them both from within. Their story is one that forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. Not just about mental illness or abuse, but about what love even means in a world where image often matters more than truth. Where likes and follows can't replace healing. Where some people don't just want to be loved, they need to be worshipped. And when that devotion feels threatened, they're willing to burn it all down, just to stay in control. Could Kavion have seen it coming? Maybe. But love has a way of blinding even the clearest eyes. He laughed with her that night. Ate with her. Slept with her. Never knowing she had already made up her mind. And that's the horror of it all. Sometimes, the people who love you most are the ones you should fear the most when they feel betrayed. So here's the question we leave you with, was this inevitable? Or was there a moment, somewhere in the silence between texts and tears, when everything could have been saved? If this story chilled you, if it made you think twice about how far love can go before it becomes lethal, hit that like button and subscribe. Because this isn't the last time love will cross the line into obsession. And next time, it could be someone you know.